My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Soulivity Live. Hey, how you doing, sir? My sister, how are you?
Hey.
My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Soulivity Live. Hey, my sister, mademoiselle.
That is the most amazing introduction I've ever heard.
Oh, for being here. Oh, what an amazing day. Go make it even more amazing. Myself and Madison, Brian Wesley Johnson. Thank you for joining us on Saturday morning. Full of passion, purpose, and high quality living. See you next time.
I'm done.
Let me do this. Hello and welcome to another edition of Soulivity Live, everyone. We had a couple little technical difficulties, but we are here and ready to go. So, my name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I'm so glad you joined us because we have a fantastic show for you today. We're going to be talking about current events. We're going to be talking about the pandemic. We're talking about our political world. Talking about things like Black Lives Matter and a whole bunch of other things, because all of these things are causing all of us stress and anxiety and pain, fear. I kind of want to move through this. And so I brought some special people to Soulivity Live to kind of talk about these. But before we get into that, I want to make sure that we thank our guests from our last live show. I want to thank Dr. Ebony Jade Hilton, and also Melva Thomas Johnson. We had a fantastic discussion about the medical effects and the psychological effects of the pandemic. And if you missed it, you really want to go back and check out that show because there's a lot of great information shared. And I thank both of them for their knowledge and expertise in helping our audience get inspired to move. And as always, if you missed it, you can always see a replay of this show or any of our other shows by visiting our new and improved YouTube channel. Also, subscribe while you're there. You will be able to receive alerts and notifications every time we go live. All right, so let's get to today's show, okay? Like I said before, we're going to talk about what's going on in our current society. Specifically, the ongoing events that are affecting our lives and creating anxiety and stress. I mean, our nation and our world has been pushed to emotional heights that have never been seen before. And I thought it was important for us to have a discussion about how to really deal with all of these events as they are coming at us in rapid succession every single day. I mean, check this out.
The White House is promising a major breakthrough in the coronavirus fight. The press secretary says the president tonight will announce progress on a treatment for COVID patients. That will come later today. We do not have any details yet. It is 7 months now since the CDC reported the first confirmed case of coronavirus here in the United States. Back on that late January day, the CDC said the risk to Americans was very low. Now that same CDC projects the U.S. death toll will likely climb past 200,000 in the next 3 weeks. 200,000 people is everyone in Salt Lake City or Grand Rapids, Michigan. The risk, it turns out, was and is very high.
The pandemic has turned Rita Campo's life upside down. The fear of getting infected and losing her job have led to depression.
I was caught off guard by sadness and overwhelming tiredness. It was the result of having to work at home while taking care of my son. I have to make lunch and dinner every day and help him learn while also helping my family. My number of household tasks was multiplied by 10.
Some anti-anxiety medication is out of stock in Portugal. Antidepressants are up by as much as 11%. There's a rise in alcohol and drug abuse, domestic violence, panic attacks, and suicide.
The COVID-19 pandemic has caused a mental health crisis in our region,
at a scale that we've never seen before.
Now, when you couple what's happening with the pandemic and how this is affecting our mental state, with the current protest around the shootings of people of color by police in cities around our nation, including people like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and most recently Jacob Blake, it is understandable that even the strongest of us can sink into despair. Now, I want to be clear. This show is not about us staying in these deep, uncomfortable feelings that are caused by our day-to-day experience. This show is about supporting you in confronting these and provide you with mechanisms and information to help you move through these times so that you can have a better life, a more peaceful life with full of wellness. Now, like I said before, we have a very special panel to kind of help us navigate these waters. And while I could go into a whole bunch of detail on my own, why don't you check out this video that tells you a little bit more. Elaine Clayton is an internationally known artist, author, certified Reiki master, intuitive reader, workshop instructor, and the creator of the Illuminara Intuitive Journal. She is the author and illustrator of several books for children and the illustrator of books by the Pulitzer-Prize-winning author Jane Smiley and Wicked author Gregory Maguire, among others. She practices Reiki and intuitive healing in New York City, Connecticut, and Atlanta. Katie Silcox is the author of the book Healthy, Happy, Sexy, Ayurveda Wisdom for Modern Women. She is also a nationally recognized yoga teacher, Ayurvedic practitioner, writer for Yoga Journal, and a senior teacher within the Tantric Sri-Vidya-based ParaYoga lineage under Yogarupa Rod Stryker. Katie was named one of the San Francisco's best yoga teachers by Common Ground magazine in 2009 and one of the 70 Yogis Changing the World in Origin magazine. Her signature teaching style blends classic yoga, vinyasa-based asana, life-changing tantric Ayurvedic philosophy. So like I said, we've got a powerful, powerful panel. So it is my pleasure to welcome Elaine Clayton and Katie Silcox to Soulivity Live. Hi, ladies.
Thank you. Such an honor to be with you both.
Oh, man, this is going to be a power hour. Remember, everybody, listen, this is an interactive discussion. So if you have any questions or comments, please just post them to any of our chats, and we're going to get to answering and responding during the show. So, wow. This week has been an incredible week. Where do we begin, right? Jacob Blake was the first part. At the RNC after that. And I don't want to go, this is not political. It's just, I want to make sure that I'm telling people. Soulivity is all about truth, honesty, integrity, and fighting fear and ignorance. And there was a lot of falsehoods, a lot of non-facts that counter everything that we know about what's going on in our world. That's why I bring the RNC. And then yesterday we had March on Washington. So there's this gambit of different things that are part of, I think, a bigger, the word I'm looking for, panorama of just basically 2020 as a whole, right? Elaine, I'm going to go to you, and then Katie, I'll ask you this question. I want both of you to kind of ground us in your own personal experience of what's happening right now. What's life been for you personally during this year? So Elaine, I'll go to you.
What has life been like for me personally? Well, you know, we were talking before about the macrocosm and the microcosm. And I think I'm feeling all of the pressure and pain of, you know, the legacy of hundreds of years of oppression, and the pain of the way I have to process that personally. And meanwhile, intuitively sensing everything shifting. Nothing is, the system is getting dismantled. It's being loosened. And how do I stay balanced within that? How do I stay composed within that? So in some ways, what's going on is so needed because it's the veil is being lifted and truth is getting known right away. And our emotions are on the surface, and so are we trying to think how to get through it. So there's that and the pain of it and the angst of it. But then being in a healing life, a mind, body, spirit oriented life, I feel like in a way, the messages that we want to bring are now people that are more conventional are now very open to what I'm trying to do. Whereas before, they didn't have to be, they weren't necessarily closed-minded, you know, entities were a lot more conventional. So I just think it has a silver lining in some ways, because this stuff breaks us open and we need to be broken open from the heart. But I can't say it's been, has not been easy, of course. It's been isolating and I cry sometimes. But I feel like we have a chance now to be more loving in a real way, to actually come to what is love, what is empathy. That has never been on our agenda. It's always been a side thing. You know, even when, and I love Dr. Fauci, but even when COVID first started, and it was obvious that people of color were dying at a higher, faster rate in New York City. This is when it was still in New York City. And they actually were at the podium saying, yes, we need to look into that as to why. Everybody knows why. Everybody knows that there are food deserts, that there's not equal pay, the opportunities are not equal, and healthcare is not equal. Why are we still pretending, oh, we need to look into it? So I feel like where we are today from that moment, how many months ago? It's only a few months, but it seems like a year or two. I think we're a lot more awake now than we were. That's just because we can't get away with fibbing anymore.
Right. And that's part of the process, right? You know, we were talking before about macro, right? Macro, micro, where as the body, as a nation, the world as a body, there are things that are happening that we've been ignoring, and they've been metastasizing. I like that.
Thank you. That analogy, because if we are a body, we are one.
Right.
But we don't know, half of us, we don't know it half the time. We're not conscious.
Exactly.
Right. But each human is like a cell within the body. We are one. We're all made of that same light. And I guess this is an era where we can actually either suffer to get to harmony or get to harmony with less suffering.
You know, speaking about embodying this and understanding the connectiveness that we all have, Katie, this is what your life's work is about, this, right? Yeah. What has been your personal experience around these times?
You know, I want to say, in my bio, you mentioned that I had studied with a teacher named Rod Stryker and that was actually an old bio. So I want to start by correcting that. And I only bring that up because it's partially an answer to your question.
Okay.
all of our structures, including the one that I was in, which was a guru-based tradition, are falling apart. And so for me, I had to make the decision to actually be myself and move out into the world without the authority and structure of a male-dominated system. And so I hesitated to even bring that up, but then I thought, I think it's really apropos, because for me personally, my life began to ask me to step into my actual spiritual sovereignty and true voice as an individual outside all of those protective structures. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening right now to our whole entire world. Our government can't be trusted. Our medical system is crumbling. Pharmaceutical companies own this country, and on and on and on. Religious institutions, even relationship between men and women it's all kind of coming, as you said before, to this sort of inflammatory head. And I think I love this idea of microcosm, macrocosm. Personally, how this has affected me is, like I'm sure Elaine and you, I'm a very embodied, feeling, empathic, intuitive person. And so I experience all of these things very much through the body. And what I'm feeling, and I think my concern and what I would love to offer to your listeners is this understanding that we are all dealing with the collective trauma. And that is affecting people of every single skin color. And when we're in a traumatic response, we go into that very reptilian brain where it's fight, flight, and freeze, and it's us versus them. And it's a really natural response when you're an animal that feels threatened. You're going to throw something, right? You're going to burn a building, or you're going to run away and hide in your closet and freeze and have depression. These are all an animal's appropriate response to an insult on the body. And so what my passion is and what I want to offer to your listeners is to really learn about trauma, learn about the way that we must, as a nation, as a people, irrespective of where we're coming from, experience the healing in a nonverbal way, because that's how the body speaks. The body processes pain through emotion, and it is wordless. It's a felt sense. And so I see a lot, and even being on this show, we have to talk about these things, right? And we can't silence ourselves, but at the same time, we run the risk of getting caught in what's called the trauma vortex, right? Where we focus on it. And so how do we find the balance between speaking up and speaking our truth? And I'm barely even on the social media anymore, because I feel we're wasting our time and energy and resources on telling people how to say things perfectly, or be, for example, as a white woman, the perfect ally. And that criticism maybe needs to be there in small amounts. But what's happening in my community is people are starting to go into freeze. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to support. And so I think a question maybe we could consider is, how can we best use our time, energy, and resources to actually start to move towards something that does look like unity, that does look like love, that does look like actual change? Because whether we like it or not, we're all going to have to be together. Right.
I'm so glad. That's why in the beginning, I wanted to make sure that people understood that this discussion isn't, a rag session, or, excuse my French, a bitch session about all our pain and all this kind of stuff. It's important for us to recognize it, right?
Yeah. And sometimes you need a bitch session.
Right, exactly. Right. But as my dad and my grandfather used to say, you don't pitch a tent in it, y'all. You don't oh yeah, I'm going to set this and I'm just going to lay and wallow in this, right? You have to, life is moving. You move through this into a new understanding about why you just went through that experience. And the answer is always growth, right? Yeah. It's always about growing. It's funny that you talk about, Katie, that you were talking about, making sure that we were moving through this and into a deeper understanding and what's next, because that was my next question. where do we go from here, right? I think, Elaine, you were talking before about some of the opportunities that exist in this moment. Because, Katie, I think you were alluding to this. While there is pain, while there is these uncomfortable feelings, while there is these structural things that have been around forever, there's also opportunities that always exist for us. We just needed to choose them, right? You know better, you do better, right? But it's hard. So, Elaine, I'm going to go to you because you had started this part of it.
Okay.
What are some of, I mean, let's dig deep into some of these opportunities that exist. Because I think, Katie, you were talking about this too, and I think it's important that we talk about the opportunities that exist for all of us and start focusing in on that part of it so we can move toward it, right? So I'll hand the floor to you.
Okay. Well, I love what you said, Katie, because I had about 15 years ago developed this intuitive stream drawing creative meditation method and a way to develop through visual imagery deeper intuitive intelligence, because I felt from years ago when I did children's books that kids, we weren't talking about empathy. When we were young, I think we were in fight or flight mode from day one in school. We were conditioned to accept fight or flight mode as a way of being. And when you're in that reptilian brain, like you were saying, Katie, you're not using your intuitive, creative, spiritual, emotionally open brain is not operating. You're shut down. You are only trying to survive, not being humiliated and not being attacked in some way. So I think that one opportunity, and again, we've all been doing what we've been doing before these really momentous times, because I think we knew that this was coming, or that we're just being ourselves in it. Having a way to center and to go inward is so essential, because if we don't do that within ourselves, how do we bring that conscious awareness of that, even being aware that we're in fight or flight mode? We have to have some conditioning that we didn't get when we were young. Nobody asked me, how do you feel about your math problem? Nobody asked me how I felt. They didn't even encourage us to, talk to each other about how someone was suffering next to us. And I'm not criticizing everybody. I've been a teacher. I know you have to have a job, but I'm just saying our overall society, after all these hundreds of years, has focused so much on rational and logical thinking as the only way to get answers. And you have to go outside and you have to pay for it, and it's going to hurt. And that we have forgotten that we're natural born creators. We have to do something with that, or we're so disconnected from our ability to be intuitively tuned in and empathic toward each other. If we can't know where we are in our consciousness, we're really lost when we come together. And I think that's part of why it's so volatile. So, my opportunity, I see it opening and, expanding, because people are so hurting that they want relief. So the stream drawing is a way to, recapture the way you freely drew without feeling criticized when you were a toddler. And I realized over the many years, people would say, I love to draw, but I'm not good at it. So they have lost that natural compulsion to make a mark, to take a blank surface and put their own voice on it, to actually be present. No one encouraged that empowerment much. So you have to use your non-dominant hand and close your eyes. And it's a little bit more fun than kind of being all jazzed up and nervous and going like this. And you're not really meditating. You're like, you got the checklist in your head. And yoga is great for, because you concentrate on your breathing and you're doing these really important moves. Drawing is another impulse that we have as a natural human innate action. We just want to. So I'm trying to help people meditate while they're getting empowered with creative energy. And I think it helps release some of the tension while you then reflect on what you felt while you drew and on the drawing itself. So that is encouraging a conversation that is intuitive, that is starting with me here in my heart and mind. And it's giving my both sides of the brain a chance to work. And then maybe I can go out and gaze upon other people with appreciation of their worth. That's what it comes down to. We are missing out on loving each other. And the system is doing it and reinforcing it. And, people that can't say Black Lives Matter, when that oppression has been specific and particular and only for hundreds of years, why can't you say it? And again, everyone's going to find their way through this, but I just feel like we are shut down at the heart chakra. But we're opening. We're starting to open.
Bravo. You got me on that one. Got me speaking. Because I think the question that I've actually been asking myself, and even with some friends of mine, have been, where do we really start? Right? And it can't, some of the, there's politics and laws and all that kind of stuff, but there has to be something higher, deeper, that affects the change that we really are seeking, right? Katie, how about you? What do you feel are the opportunities? I think you were moving into that, and I want to make sure that we're continuing that line.
I loved what Elaine said, and I think we're, in Tantra and Ayurveda, they understood this time and they called it the Kali Yuga, the age of disillusionment, the age of violence, darkness, the age of trial and tribulation. And yet it's also the time when there's the most opportunity to come to God, to come to the light, to come to love, whatever you want to call it, to come home. And I really feel that in me. Like I sense as a deeply intuitive person, the way in which we are when something's actually too unbearable to actually feel inside of our own body, because all of us are walking around with fear and rage and anger and hurt. And all of us are the children of many times like emotionally immature parents and grandparents, because we're all walking around with that. And I think the African American community holds this very special form of that pain body. That for whatever reason, this moment is asking all of us to hold that with you guys. And it's a great honor to do that. But at the same time, it's triggering all of that unresolved stuff in everyone else. And so when you're just really not ready to deal with that and tend to it with kindness, with compassion, it's a huge job, right? When you're not ready to tend to your own anger and your own violence, and what do? We talk about other people, and like
distraction,
yeah, distraction, and this kind of like, I call it this othering syndrome. And I'll be honest, like when Donald Trump won, I was so upset. I actually did a tantric practice where I felt all the rage and all the fear and all the anger that was there as a woman. That was a big deal for us when he got elected. It was just a huge punch in the gut for women and for oppressed communities. But what I'll say is it was hurting me so bad that I started this tantric practice where you hold your enemy in your arms as a baby.
Oh.
And I hated it. I hated this.
I don't want this man baby in my arms.
Like I'm holding my baby Trump. And over time, I actually began to see him becoming more and more young in my arms to that moment of being a baby. And I looked across his life and I saw how he was the child of a father that could never love him. And he was always, and all these insights came to me. Now, I'm not saying that in any way that absolves him or that we need to have him in office. But what I'm saying is it melted that hardening on my own heart.
Right.
And so even though this is a tall ask, what I think is being asked of us is, who have you thrown out of your heart? because it's only hurting you.
Mm.
You know, and I think, you know, I could say so much about this, but like what began to happen was I began to feel better. And I began to feel the essence of who I am, which is not a woman. It's not a woman from the South. It's not a white lady. It's not all those labels, right? Author, yoga teacher. It just began to be that I began to identify with the part of me that is completely unchanging, which is, as Elaine said, love. And the second thing I want to say is I have something, I'm actually don't really teach yoga anymore. I have something called body church. You know, the church itself is crumbling, and the church used to be a place that you would go to move and dance, and there was drumming. And what I just want to recommend, as Elaine was saying, the drawing, also the dancing and the moving, because emotion cannot be processed without movement. So I began to meditate with love on the enemy, the perceived enemy, and to really keep the body moving, which compounded during this coronavirus time. Everyone's becoming, in many places, more sedentary and more locked in, when actually we need the opposite. We need to move. And if we can, we actually need to move together.
I love it. I love it. I love this conversation. I'm so glad you ladies are here. This is exactly the kind of conversation I wanted to have, and I wanted it to be a gift to everyone in our community. Why don't we take a pause? And we're going to do a quick reset, and then when we come back, we're going to continue this line of turning the opportunities into growth and specifics around what are the practical things that we need. So hang tight, ladies, and everyone. We'll be right back with Soulivity Live. Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
Some people have a posture in which the shoulders round. Some people have a belly that came from long hours working in a computer. Driving, grabbing your baby, the posture changes with your lifestyle. So we have to reprogram our posture in order to have a better lifestyle. So what is important here to know? Our work, the house of our body, with the roof here, the diaphragm, with the pelvic floor that is the ground, and the whole core muscles are the walls of the house, have to work properly in order to have a good posture and a good movement.
Watch Body Fit with Alexa Marine every Monday and Thursday at 9 a.m. right here on Soulivity TV. All right, and we are back with more of Soulivity Live. I'm welcoming my guests back, Katie Silcox and Elaine Clayton. We're continuing this discussion about, and I'm just going to call it what it is. It's our world pain body that we're now trying to heal. That's what this discussion is about. And we're talking about some opportunities that exist for us to heal, to grow, to mature, to expand. And I want to target people right now in the Black community. Your takes on this, because and I want to be clear, because we're talking about Black Lives Matter. It does not mean that other disenfranchised, discriminated groups don't matter. But the Black experience specifically in America has been painfully unique, and there has been things that have not been resolved. I think Roland Martin said it best on one of his programs, where he said that at its core, African American people and other people of color do not feel as though they have the same freedoms. I'm using that word specifically, freedom, that other people have. That is inherent, that we're looked at differently, and because of that, treated differently. Because of that, there's all systems that have been made justified. So from both of your perspectives, and I'll go to you, Katie, first, because we're talking about deep wounds all the way around that need to be healed. But what are some of the thoughts that you have around, first, how people of color can stay grounded, and then people who are not of people of color who can stay grounded, and how they can bridge together? That's what we're talking about. And this is a difficult conversation, but at the same time, it needs to be had, and it needs to be had so that we can.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, just the fact that I'm sitting here with you as a white woman talking to a Black man, that the fact that we're sitting here having this conversation, first, I just want to thank you for having me here and for being willing to talk with me with such love and openness. And like that in and of itself is healing. I can tell you it's healing for me, and you maybe could have your experience around it and let us know. But like just the fact that you're willing and I'm willing to come together and have these really difficult conversations, where, I mean, the quote that you read illuminated my heart. Like I was like, wow, that qualifier of you saying this is how these people feel, and just to hear that, I think, number one, to be willing to have these conversations with love, and to both sides be willing to bring their open hearts, and us as white folks do a lot of listening. And so I think that's important, to be willing to sit in our body and in the discomfort that arises even as we start to speak of these things. For our Black African American listeners, I see this in my community. We have 400 women in our Shakti school. I have a women's empowerment Ayurveda school. We have 400 women. And I see the way that this lack of resource is a huge problem. And so the first thing that I think is important is for folks to have support and resource that enables them to feel safe. So whether that be a community member, a grandmother, a mama, a sister, a therapist, whoever it is that you feel safe with, that you can process your feelings with. And if it can be a therapist, even better. If it's a body-based therapist, because these are pain bodies that need a body-based response, we are not going to get that on Instagram and Facebook. It is impossible to process the pain body on social media, but we can process it with one another. And if we were in the same room, it would be even better, right? So like, maybe divert some of the energy off of social media and the news and onto being in the room with people that make you feel held and safe. The other thing I would say is go back to your traditions. Learn about what did your ancestors do when they felt grief and pain? Because I'll tell you, most of our ancestors, and we're all from an ancestral earth-based culture at the end of the day, they drummed, they danced, they moved these beautiful bodies. They did not sit still at home alone in their houses, like with a screen like this. That is adding to the anxiety and the depression. The other thing I would say is fuel your body with high quality fats and oils. I know it seems silly and cliche, but the more you can treat your body as a temple, the more you're going to have that brain chemistry of dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and these feel-good chemicals. One of my favorite books right now, I'm sure you guys have heard of it, but for your listeners, is My Grandmother's Hands by Resmaa Menakem. He's a Black somatic experiencing therapist. And if you can't afford a therapist, get that book. It's, $5 used on Amazon, $13.99. He is going to help the Black community process the trauma. He's been there, he's done that. And it's a completely different perspective than simply speaking about the issues. It's feeling about the issues to the point where you can begin to access the part of you that is untouched and unaffected by the pain body. Right. And I could go on, but I want to respect the time and you guys, but I'm passionate about this. So thank you for letting me share.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. And thank you for that. I mean, that's another show. I'd love to do a show on that specifically. Because before we get to Elaine, I think that, yes, there's the reality of the current circumstance in terms of laws and all that. And it's important for us to feel as though we are empowered.
Exactly.
We are a light. No one can touch that. And that we are going to move forward with that and create from that space. Yeah. Elaine, how about you? What are some of the things that you specifically during this time, and we're talking about people of color or non-people of color and how they can bridge that gap? What are some of your thoughts and feelings?
I have a lot. And what you just said made me think of the song, This Little Light of Mine. Mm-hmm. So I want to start from a different angle a little bit because yes, everything I do with all I've got, I'm trying to support people in getting into a meditative spiritual place where they open to themselves, where we and can feel our own power of feeling and emotion be born into ideas and solutions. But I just want to say, so when I was 17, I left home and I went in the rural South and I did some work that taught me that Black people teach me. I already knew this from watching people and from seeing the suffering. I already knew that. But I then put myself in some positions on purpose to learn more. And what I want to say two things about what I learned, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, go for it.
This era for me is about, I want to learn from you. I can tell you, I can share with you what I do, but this is my time to learn from you. Because as much as there has been unique and specific oppression and pain, there is the most beautiful strength to behold. I can't say it enough. There aren't words to say it. But what I saw when I was in the rural South, and this was only 1979, it should have been a lot better by then. But I saw people having to live on the other side of the tracks, no running water, no electricity, little children that wanted to go to 7-Eleven. I saw how they got treated. I was with them. I didn't have the same treatment toward me exactly, but not even near, but I got to see how that weight of oppression begins so young. And then people turn around and say, why don't you make your life better? It's all on you. But you have every day this huge weight on you. And then when I was young and lived in Atlanta, I decided, this is like 1984, maybe it was 1983. I'm going to go as a white lady. I was only in my like 22 and work in Southwest Atlanta where it was all Black. And, you know, I thought I'm going to learn what oppression really is, because I have always been a part of the dominant culture. I get to look at it and not think about it if I don't want to, and think about it when I want to. But what if I went in and I just became one of the people who are so, you know, not of that dominant culture there, that I get to learn how painful that feels firsthand, because I felt like I should try. But you know what? Everybody was nice to me. They were so loving to me. They taught me how to be deeper intuitively. They taught me about creative visualization. That's when I learned about Shakti Gawaine's book, you know. They demonstrated, you know, you talked, Katie, about holding the Trump baby. Black people have had to hold some kind of baby all this time, because it's so hard to get past negative and toxic emotion if we don't in some way overcome the pain, yet at the same time, you know, having to not surrender to what is inhumane, as we were saying earlier. So I just want to say that where I come from right now is I want to teach people how to stream draw, to have a way to go inward and to get their voice out and to feel empowered. But from my earliest impressions, I think this is a time when we are supposed to listen to what Black people are saying. We cannot, if you got a cut on your arm and you don't heal it, you are letting every infection into your body. And by the way, we have a pandemic during this, so how symbolic is that? It's a sickness overall. Right. But I feel like if I don't open my heart and start really listening, and it is hard to have conversations. I was on social media today about whether or not, you know, how do we deal with the violence component? Right. It's okay for violence to happen if it's not my house or my business, I guess. You know, people probably are comfortable and it's kind of a place of privilege. But at the same time, it takes some of that to not just capitulate and appease and to protest on your own terms and all that. So but these are hard conversations to have, but I feel like we should be having them.
Thank you for that. You know, as I was thinking and feeling about what both of you were saying, the thought came to my mind that I want to clear to our audience. Listening to what specifically Black people and people of color are saying the healing isn't exclusive.
No.
Healing begets healing begets healing. So as we listen to each other, healing just spreads. Yeah. And then you learn how to listen to enfranchised indigenous people of different sexual orientation. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. But we've got to start somewhere. And this moment right now is what we're talking about. That we got to start here. And again, I love that you said that we're in the midst of a pandemic, because you can't go anywhere.
You have to go inward, really.
You got to go inward. You got to deal with it, right? And so, wow. While we have some time, I want to make sure that we're moving the ball forward, and that we're talking about like the practical, like more practical steps that we can take. Like, so I'm going to ask each of you to tell us, what are three things? What are three things that we can practice today that grounds us and helps us perfect a focused practice of awareness of ourselves and awareness that builds the ability to make someone else feel safe, and we can feel safe and have these kind of conversations. Because I think too, again, I have a sneaking suspicion that as we move through this and we get closer to each other, that the pandemic will start to kind of resolve itself. You know, I just have that sneaking suspicion. So Elaine, I'll go to you because you were starting down this road. I want to help let you keep that thread going.
Well, I feel like we need to, 3 things you said.
Yes.
Okay. So the first would be, don't forget what your ideals are, what your sense of virtue is, and what your ideals are, what you love. What you love is who you are. What you love may be a little different from what I love, but if I listen to what you love, then it adds to my sense of understanding. So you got to be in touch with what you love, though, like about life, about being on the earth. And so if we're not in touch with it, then we don't even, our ideals, we're kind of not grounded. So I would say first, just acknowledge, hey, I do have things I love. So, and of course I use this stream drawing method to help people kind of get there. And it's really easy. But the other thing I would say is shifting by, holding on to your ideals and then going inward in a way that is creative, because you can't put your engine down to low and be happy. You can't forget you're a creator and be happy. We have to create. That's our natural state too. That's what we were born here. I tell people, you are a miracle. You are the only you. And so once you're gone, and if we don't hear from you about how you think and feel, then we miss out. So being creative is really important. And so having a way that you address your ideals, be creative. And then the third thing I would say is make time for it. I think as Bruce Lipton said, we are only conscious 5% of the day. So this is scary because that means there's a lot of unconscious conditioning that we are just reacting and we don't even know we're programmed to react in a certain way. But if you go inward and, again, I use the stream drawing method as a way to get that consciousness up, a stream of consciousness flow, similar to when you're dreaming at night, when all that stuff surfaces, to become more aware. And so then you have a voice, then you know what you love, and you have given yourself time to cultivate that beauty that you have as a creator. Then you can appreciate it in other people. And so I hope that makes sense, but I could talk about it forever too. So
again, that's another show. I'm loving this. You're helping me do my job. Katie, how about you? What are 3 things that would be supportive to people to help them build this practice, right? This practice of staying grounded, staying focused, opening up their hearts.
And before you said, and feeling safe, which we can't feel grounded or open our hearts if we don't feel safe with one another and ourselves. And I think to make it really practical, maybe we can do this together and your listeners at home, but just putting your hand on your chest. My big thing is about trauma, the brain, and the neurology of the body. And when you put your hand on your chest, already you start to just feel differently. You start to kind of get a sense of being connected to something. Taking your right ear to your right shoulder and just letting your eyes look down at your right shoulder and holding that for, 30 to 60 seconds. What we're doing is we're differentiating the eyes from that side of the neck. And what that starts to affect is the cervical spine. And that cervical spine is where we are getting hit by that hindbrain reactivity, fight or flight. And so just letting your eyes look towards your right shoulder starts to deactivate some of that fight or flight. And then obviously you do it on the other side, just letting your left ear drop towards your left shoulder and let your eyeballs look towards your left shoulder. And just do that for about 30 to 90 seconds. And I do this, it's called half salamander. I do this throughout the day when I start to notice that I'm feeling afraid or I'm feeling existentially alone and all these emotions, anger, and then you can let that come back to center and just notice we did like a minute of practice. And Right. I mean, we didn't even do it. We could have held that for a lot longer, but doing those practical things. And then I would say that's 1, 2. So the third thing is called the matrix of support. Who are your allies? Who loves you? And you can bring in, for me, I'm a big fan of Jesus. That's one of my allies. I bring in some Jesus. I get my heart in the room with love. I get my heart. I call in something bigger than me and my limited sense of what's going on. And as you start to call in that love, it could be nature, Buddha, Jesus, but like, get somebody on your team that's bigger than you. You know, you could even call in your mama, your grandmama. It can be lineage support. Call in the matrix of support. I even sometimes visualize, like you said, the tribe, like the friends that have got my back, that know my heart. And those are the 3 things. And I know we could talk about 30 of those things, but before we close, I just want to say, I came onto this call with such a heavy heart. I'm going through a personal thing. And you two have uplifted me so much. And just being here has been such a shift for me. And so I think the last thing is just to speak your heart, speak your truth, tell people when they affect you, as I'm doing with you guys. And I just really appreciate you both.
It's likewise.
Absolutely.
Likewise. I started out with a lot of pressure because I'm in the middle of a move and I don't understand all of it and whatever. And I'm trying to always stay centered through it. And this, I realized can we do this every morning? Because now I'm going to have a great day.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is the purpose and passion of Soulivity. This is it in action, right? To create connective tissue between everybody so everybody can feel heard, validated, loved, safe, all those. And then from that space, create the best life, right? Because now you're anchored in who you really are, right? You're validated as a light. Words that we use. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you both. We got to do this again. You do this again?
Sure.
Yeah, we may have to do this every
in action, and I would love to do stream drawing so people can learn how to do it, and then a little bit more of what Katie just brought.
Heck yeah,
I could be doing that.
Both of what you guys are doing. Listen, everyone, I posted both Katie and Elaine's Instagrams in our chat. Better go check them out. I'm coming after you. This has been a wonderful discussion, and look, to be continued. Life is about growth. Growth is not a destination. Like, stop.
Right. Never
You
ends.
continue to talk and learn and grow. And I love one of my spiritual teachers, one of my happy tribe, Reverend Howard Caesar, just always talk about it as the great spiral upward of a spiral upward, flying upward. So thank you for being a part of that. So stick around for a hot second while I do some quick logistics here. So everybody, listen, this has been part of our collaboration with Beyond Words Publishing. We have a whole bunch of great authors and teachers and classes. So we appreciate you for joining us for this specific show. We're having giveaways. There's one going on right now. If you go to our Soulivity Live book club and join, you'll be able to learn about all the things that we're doing in the club and all the great giveaways that we're doing. And some books by these two lovely ladies that we talked about, or even other things. Before we end the show, I want to make sure that I acknowledge someone who just passed away. Somebody who was important to specifically the African American community, but I think transcended all of that. Actor Chadwick Boseman passed away from colon cancer. Didn't know. Not a joke. Not a joke. It's for real. And what I wanted to do was acknowledge him, acknowledge the things that he's done, and wanted you guys to kind of watch. Everybody knows about Black Panther, but he's been a fantastic actor and had so many different roles throughout his career. And I just want to, I can get the video going. Hang on, guys. There we go.
Is this not why you are here? Answer me, you black son of a bitch!
You want a player that doesn't have the guts to fight back?
No. I want a player who's got the guts not to fight back.
Ernie, this is Floyd Little. Floyd, this is...
Ernie Davis. 2,386 yards, 360 carries, 6.6 yards a carry.
You're good at math, huh? Don't you look at that poster of me on your wall and tell me you want to be like me, because that isn't enough. You're gonna have to do better than that. You think you can?
Yes, sir.
Look at me! Nate! Look at me! What happened, Nate? Talk to me. I can't. Come on. I can't talk. I can't. Talk to me. Now, if you hold that in, it's gonna eat you up. Nate, I'm your father. All I had to do was say the word abort, and they'd be alive.
Hey. Out. Showtime, baby. Out. Yo, get out, man.
So you weren't sure if she was legal?
I assumed she was. But I mean, high school girls crash the parties a lot.
And you seek them out?
That's not my thing. Ask anyone. I don't hang with the chicks from Parker High and Lynbrook. I didn't know she was from Lynbrook. I thought she was my age. Hey, I swear.
Give me something I can hit.
And here comes the pitch.
Feeling better than I ever felt.
Wow. Chadwick, thank you. Thank you. I'll be with you for a long, long time. Part of my soul for a long time. Thank you, brother. Elaine and Katie, thank you for being here. I appreciate this conversation. Appreciate you sharing all of who you are with our audience. And this is what Soulivity is all about. So,
Honor.
I just want to let everybody know that next week we have actress Jade Taylor. We're going to continue some of this conversation. She's a beautiful actress and vocalist, but she's also an incredible advocate. So we're going to be talking about some of the things that she's doing around moving our country ahead, which is a part of what Soulivity is all about. So thanks again for joining us. And on behalf of Elaine and Katie and all of you out there, I want to say thank you for joining us. And until next time, of course, I'm wishing you passion, purpose, and an incredible life. See you next time.
Thank you.
Soulivity Magazine brings you the best in inspiration on Soulivity TV. Check out our new shows. Mark your calendars for Soulivity Magazine shows by going to soulivity.com now.